Good afternoon and welcome. This is Melissa Joy and I'm joined by Morgan Glenn. We're here to present a webinar on your financial story. And in order to get started, I wanted to give you a little bit of background. First, as I said, I'm Melissa and I'm a financial planner here at the center. And I'm joined by Morgan, who is a Gaia Leadership Certified Coach. Morgan and I met each other about a year ago, and what we learned was that we have different approaches to working with people, but there's an intersection in the work I do as a financial planner and the work that Morgan does as an executive coach. So as we explored that intersection, I thought it would be really helpful for us to share some of the lessons that Morgan and exercises that Morgan uses to work with people in order to make them feel more confident about their approaches to finances, because it fits really well with some of the needs of my clients when trying to apply technical financial planning. So with that, Morgan, can you do a little bit more to introduce yourself and tell us about why you're working in this field?
Absolutely, and good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all so much again for being here. And I do want to thank Melissa and everyone here at the Center for Financial Planning for the opportunity to discuss this passionate topic. I just love all of this work. So before we jump in to the idea of your financial story, I do want to talk a bit more about my background. So as Melissa mentioned, I am a Gaia Leadership Certified Coach, and I do want to talk about a little bit more about what that is. So as far back as I can remember, I've always had a passion for helping people uncover their truest potential. I remember in college and different times in my life where I was having a lot of deeper conversations with people or helping them through things, and I just loved being that supportive person for others. So about 3.5 years ago, I went through something which we'll talk about in a little bit, which breaks down my financial story a little bit, and that really ignited my passion for wanting to pursue a coaching certification. So I chose the Gaia Leadership because it's holistic based. So I really work with people as a whole, so all aspects of the person, not just one piece, not just one area. So we work a lot with, their health, their self-care, their personal life, their professional life, and making sure all of that aligns.
And I think that is one of the reasons that we have such synthesis between our thoughts, because when we think about financial planning here at the center, we're not thinking about how just the dollars and cents. We're thinking about the person, all aspects of their life, and how that can fit in, how their money can fit the best within their life.
Exactly. And so what that certification gave me was just a better, well-rounded education and a lot of great tools to help people just become more aware of the things they wanted and goals that they had and how to prioritize them.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your story?
Yeah, so here you see a picture of Welcome to Pure Michigan, which to some of you, you're like, wow, this is, doesn't really mean much, but to me, it's such a powerful image. And so about 3.5 years ago, I was newly divorced, actually, and I packed up all of my things. I was driving down the highway somewhere on 94 East, just reflecting. And I had about an 8-hour drive all to myself in the car. And so I had a lot of time to just think about things. I had time to think about reflect on my past and where I had been and what I really wanted moving forward. And when I found myself being really confident and feeling really like just happy and feeling great about my future and the things that I wanted for myself, these negative thoughts and these limiting beliefs, which I didn't know what they were at the time, but that's what they were, kept creeping in and kind of took away that spark and that excitement I had. And some of those thoughts were, Morgan, you are leaving a financially stable environment. You've never had to deal with the finances. Your ex did that for you guys. It wasn't really your role in the relationship. And so when I would think about my future, the whole financial piece was one that was a big trigger for me and one that really scared me. And so with each passing mile, I would find myself feeling a bit more panicked, but over time, as I keep going down 94 East, I just decided that, you know what, I'm not going to buy into that anymore. You know, before, my experiences and some things that happened in my childhood or people that I was surrounding myself with taught me the money story that, you know, money buys happiness, and money was something also that people could be dishonest about, or just overall that I'm bad with money because I don't know how to save it. So the good news about this, and what I realized on that trip home, is that, you know, you're in control and you have the ability to return all of those thoughts and rewrite new experiences for yourself to change your relationship with money. So when I actually landed back on the footsteps of my childhood home after that 8-hour drive, day by day and little by little, I just started to shift my life. And I started reading books on self-development. I started making an effort on meeting new people, and let go of relationships that weren't necessarily serving me in a positive way. And I just wanted to, again, really start to help others work through that same piece. So today, my financial story sounds so much different than the old one. Today, it's, you know, you're a saver, you manage money really well, and you're capable of making enough to fit your lifestyle. So at this point, I'm hoping that you're wondering, oh, how did you do that, Morgan? Like, how did you dramatically shift your life?
I also hope that you're thinking, gosh, I've got a story as well. Some people know what their story is, and others have that story hanging out with them, but it's not conscious. So This is a great opportunity. We're going to go through the actual exercises that you would suggest today in order to identify that story.
Absolutely. So the first piece that I really started to learn and put into practice was mindfulness. And so what is mindfulness really? Well, it's actually something that's been practiced for centuries by our ancestors or spiritual leaders, religious figure, whatever suits you to think about in that way. And if you've noticed too, it's become quite a bit of a trendy topic lately. And I think Melissa and I can agree it's both for good reason. I mean, what are you doing at this moment right now? You know, you're probably sitting at a desk or listening to this over the phone, but how many screens do you have open on your computer? Are you texting a friend? Are you shooting off a quick email while you're writing this?
Making a grocery list, thinking about what you've got to get done later today.
Yes, right. There's all these tasks that we have to accomplish, right? Or, you know, maybe think back to when you're at a child's sporting event and you're there physically, but mentally, you know, maybe you were making that grocery list or, you know, thinking about that big deadline you have coming up at work.
I think about it a lot because I just got back from a vacation.
Yes.
And everyone is clicking their photos to experience things rather than stepping back and getting the experience itself.
And just being in that present moment.
Right.
And, you know, because we're so wrapped up in accomplishing all of our tasks or, you know, getting that great photo of, you know, while on your vacation, we tend to find happiness in other things. And we've really lost time to connect and be in touch with what I feel is the most important relationship and why, you know, I really talk to my clients about this. And that relationship is the one with yourself. It's so important to check in with yourself. You know, how are you feeling? You know, and just make sure that that relationship is solid. So mindfulness can be discussed in a multitude of ways, but for the purpose of our webinar today and our topic, we're going to really focus on how it ties into our financial story. So according to Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, he is the founder of the American Mindfulness Movement, defines it as the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And I want to take a second here to really emphasize the word non-judgmentally, because I think when people and clients start to really look at this kind of stuff, it can be easy to, you know, have some negative self-talk or be hard on yourself about maybe the financial decisions you've made in the past, or maybe your lack of knowledge just around, you know, investments or whatever it is. So it's really important to meet yourself with compassion here. And so looking at my example of, you know, I am bad with money because I spent it on things that I thought would make me happy. You know, how did I use mindfulness to start to break that down? And what I did is I just started journaling. So let's say I bought a new handbag or something, I would take note of, that day, how did I feel? Like, how did this purchase make me really feel? And of course, I was really excited. I got this new item, I wanted to show it off, and I wanted to take it, and take it out on the town. And so that, of course, was a great day. And then I'd check in with myself about a week later. And yeah, that excitement was still there a bit, and, it was still fun having it. But then I would notice a few months or even just a month later, that relationship wasn't as exciting, and it didn't bring me that happiness that I thought. And oftentimes I was already anticipating the purchase of something else. So, and then I also began to think, what else could I have done with that money? But I was being gentle with myself. I wasn't being hard on myself. I was just saying, just think about that. Just take note of it. When your mind presents you with these thoughts, a key part of mindfulness is just making sure you're taking note of it. This isn't like whack-a-mole when a thought pops up and you have to shove it down, right away. It's just being comfortable with it. I often use the example of pretend you're at a movie theater. You're just sitting back in a chair and you're watching something on the screen just pass. That's what I want you to do when you're starting to think about your money story and thinking through some of those experiences or thoughts that you have.
I love the example of journaling. I suggest that people who have fear about their investment decisions do the same thing, because investment decisions, there are times when there's very heightened emotions.
Yeah.
And rather than a changing behavior during that time, I ask people to write down how they feel right now. Let's say the market is really down. And then they can look back at that if they do keep a journal in the significant moments of time where they really feel that stress. And sometimes the forgiveness of time allows them to get some context of how they were feeling so they can identify those triggers in the future. So I love the idea of writing things down when it relates to your example, and there's so many other useful examples where journaling is powerful.
Definitely. And, another thing that mindfulness did for me, and, this exercise that I'll lead you guys through, is that I found balance. I really, of course, I still enjoy buying nice things or, going out on the town one night. But I don't expect these things to make me feel a certain way. And if it's, a new pair of shoes or something that I'm wanting to buy, now I actually budget for them. I save money towards that. So it's kind of like, it's just a different relationship and a healthier one that I have around my financial story.
So I think what I'm hearing is that you're not suggesting that someone changes their personality.
Correct.
But they're more intentional with how their typical decisions are interacting with their mind and their life.
Yeah, it's just a better way to get to know yourself and, figure out a little bit more about, what you actually prioritize, what's actually important to you.
That's terrific.
So the next part with the mindfulness is that by doing that, by journaling and sorting these things out, I decided and I figured out that, gosh, I have some really deeply rooted patterns of thought here, whether it's from my childhood or just an environment I was in at one time. And so oftentimes what can come up is that, for some people that I've seen, it's, maybe money for them equals struggle, or money is just unavailable, or, money is bad and it can cause pain, depending on, a lot of times this stems from our relationships with money in childhood, seeing your parents use it, seeing them talk about it. There's so many things that influence us. So for the purpose of this webinar, I want to use the example of, just I'm not good with money. And so if you think about it, this belief is a result of years and years of allowing it to become your reality. So the more that you're telling yourself that you're not good with money, the more I was telling myself, this handbag will make me happy, the more it became my reality and the stronger it became rooted in my beliefs. But the good news and the happy part of this is that every single one of us is capable of overcoming this and releasing themselves of that old limiting belief.
So I think that limiting beliefs and the concept, you really introduced me to that terminology, but it's something that I've seen as a pattern with anyone. Some people's limiting beliefs are easier to identify and speak to. They're closer to the surface, or they just really, it can be something that impairs them. But we all have a dialogue that seems to have recurrences in our lives, whether it's I'm afraid to spend money, or I spend money too easily, or there are certain types of your interactions with finances that make you uncomfortable. So I just think it's terrific to have the concept that this has you can identify it as something and then work with it. Yeah,
it almost kind of becomes like a concrete thing that you can see and almost feel. So once we have that limiting belief sorted out, in that case, well, I'm just bad with money, we reach a point, much like this image that you're seeing here, and we have the decision to, take this work on and break this cycle and create something new. Much like I was driving down the road, on 94 East that day on my trip back to Michigan, you're in the driver's seat as well. You have the power to do this, and you have the choice to move forward and again, create that new story. So I do want to take a little bit of time to just see how our lack of mindfulness and our deeply rooted limiting beliefs, how does this really affect us? What's happening to us today? And so I just thought this data was so surprising. So according to a magazine article in Times Magazine, 1 in 3 Americans have 0% saved for retirement. And according to a Forbes article in 2016 as well, 63% of Americans don't have enough money to pay for a $500 or $1,000 emergency.
So those numbers, certainly there's a population that lacks the resources, but then that gets deep into the middle class of America, where oftentimes when I work with someone in the beginning, just getting emergency reserves, which is kind of like the lowest level of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and when it comes to finances, is one of the first things that we work on. And what I've found doing that work with people is there's no rhyme or reason in terms of their cash flow background, how much money they're earning, or what you would consider them from the outside looking in to say who doesn't have those reserves. And that's just one example, but certainly this type of mindfulness work paired with financial planning, I find means that people have much more are much less on the fringes of being okay or not.
And, so really what do these people do, and oftentimes they're, probably resorting to charging things on a credit card, or they're borrowing from friends or family. Melissa, I'm sure you see a lot of examples of this, and what that does is by, if you're having to borrow from friends or family, or you're having to miss bills to pay for that unexpected emergency per se, it's again reestablishing that relationship with that old limiting belief, and it's reinforcing that again, causing that vicious cycle to keep continuing. So, Melissa could tell us even more about, how handling and, continuing on this path could lead to some instability, but really my approach with clients that I take is, how is this affecting us as individuals? What toll is this taking on our mental health, our quality of life, and what really can we do about it? So the answer most frequently in terms of what, how it's impacting us is it's manifesting in several different ways. So first, it's creating a lot of stress just on us individually, and it's also creating probably a lot of tension in our close relationships, whether that's family or with your partner. And it also causes us to feel a lot of shame and guilt. We start telling ourselves again that, we're bad with money, or maybe we're just bad overall because we just don't understand what's happening. And there does tend to be a lot of shame that we hold on to around money. So the work that I do with clients really begins to release them from that, break that limiting belief down so that they can make changes, in this case financially, and they're able to really decide what's important to them and then reach or exceed their goals.
In my experiences, shame is something that is rarely spoken about when it comes to finances, but many people carry it, and it's very difficult to predict who will feel that lack of confidence when it comes to money, because when I look at things objectively in terms of people's financial situations, people with very strong financial circumstances can still feel very insecure about their ability to make financial decisions. Certainly, it's common that people will focus on a singular financial decision that might not have worked out when they've made many decisions across their life that were good. And as you think about modern concepts of wellness, carrying that stress with you, carrying those trigger points or just the negative emotions that come along with people that really harbor on these things results in worse overall health. So any opportunity to increase confidence in these areas, I think, is time well spent for people.
Absolutely. And, I just want to tell everybody that, when dealing with shame and working through this, to me, what I've found is that showing weakness or showing vulnerability about something that, you're not sure of, but enlisting people that can help you is the greatest sign of strength that I feel anybody, would you agree? I just feel like that's such a powerful thing that you're doing for yourself and others around you.
I agree, and I many times when I start working with people, they are unsure what a financial planning relationship will look like, and that uncertainty can cause stress as well. And they come in feeling that they're inadequate or they could have done more before that starting point. And what the goal for me as a financial planner, or I know for you as a coach, as an executive coach, is to instill confidence. And when you can start working on things rather than thinking about the things you need to work on too, then that is a terrific way to feel that you're constructively contributing to a positive future for yourself.
Definitely. And so regardless, as we're thinking about this, where we're sitting today, regardless of your age or where you're at, that's technically a lifetime of feeling this way. It's a lifetime of that pattern and that belief, being rooted. And, when you think about it in that perspective and in relation to the statistics that we talk about, it really may not seem that surprising that, as we just discussed, money is a sensitive subject. It's something that, we all have a relationship with. But what sticks out to me, because Melissa and I both see this on the work we do, is that you're not alone. And to end this cycle, we just have to be proactive and we just have to be vulnerable about it. So let's just take a moment here. I know this is a lot of information and it's a little bit of a deep dive that we're talking about. And so this can seem a little bit overwhelming, but I just want to focus us back on why we're here, maybe why you signed up for this webinar. We're all coming from different backgrounds, and this really is universal work. So being able to identify other limiting beliefs, using these tools that you're going to get today can impact so many areas of your life, not just the financial aspect too. And also what I found too is sharing my story is that there's a lot of healing in talking to others, especially supportive ones who are there to offer you tools or education or just a good ear to listen to. So these are all positive things and things that we can work through together.
And I've mentioned that there's the great opportunity when you share, especially with a professional that you're consulting with, whether it's a financial planner or executive coach, to have someone who can give you permission to celebrate when you've achieved something. That's something that is really important. Also, that as you pass money and hopes and dreams from generation to generation, I think this is an incredible generational exercise. Any of you who are listening to this who know people who are younger, who have the opportunity to just start out, that having the tool set that we're talking about here today is very powerful in setting them up for a less stressed out and more successful financial future.
Absolutely. So let's begin in taking a look at, what your financial story could be. So before we go any further, I do want to just take a second and imagine that you're talking to a close friend. I just want to touch back on this idea of compassion, meeting yourself in a non-judgmental way. So let's say your friend is coming to you with a problem or something they're upset about. What would that conversation really look like? Would you be supportive? Would you comfort them? Would you show compassion towards that person? Or would you tell them they're bad? Would you say, I don't have time for you right now, or they don't deserve to be happy? My guess is that ultimately you would choose compassion. And so what I want you to do is show yourself that same feeling of compassion as well.
Can we just take a minute? That is such a powerful concept.
Yeah.
When you know what you've said internally and you share it with someone like a financial planner, I hope I get the opportunity to use that soon, because it is the best example that you would never, say the same negative things to someone else. You'd start looking for ways to feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a really good way to check in with yourself, just about your self-talk, how are you talking to yourself? And sometimes I tell clients that, say that out loud, say what you're thinking out loud, because oftentimes you may just laugh at that and think, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. Why would I ever say that to myself? So it's a really powerful way of framing that, and a good way to visualize, what that conversation looks like. So the first part of the exercise really takes that mindfulness piece and the limiting beliefs exercise and puts them together. So we want to actually write what that belief is. So, think of a time when you're getting ready to, maybe pay a credit card bill, or maybe you received an unexpected bill in the mail. Or for me, this is actually something that happened to me. I would be sitting on my couch and, an ad for a retirement, thing would come on, and I would just get so uncomfortable, and I would just feel so anxious, and I'd want to turn the channel because I was burying those feelings. I was terrified of exploring that piece of me just because it was scary. So what I want you to do is, don't try to change the thought. Just focus on, what does it sound like? What's triggering me at this moment? And, it could be something like, you're thinking about that again, or, you're feeling anxious about this. So, and again, pay attention to how you're talking to yourself. Were you saying things like, oh, you're so unprepared and bad with money, or, you should have known this bill was coming, or whatever it is. And so keep in mind, too, that it's likely that there could be more than just one limiting belief presenting itself. But I always advise people I work with is just take it step by step, start slow, and work through it at a comfortable place. So for the purpose of the exercise, we're going to, again, stick with that I am bad with money. And so for the next part, we're going to take that and we're going to use one of my favorite and most powerful tools that I use in coaching. It's simply just reframing it, so making it a positive statement. So a few examples of your limiting belief, if it's I am bad with money, if you could just rewrite that into simply, okay, I am good with money, or I am learning to manage money better, or maybe I haven't had great examples of how to manage money, but I'm working to change that. Another one I like is my current financial situation is temporary, but I'm taking the right steps to feel more stable. And just, if you look at those side by side, continually telling yourself, I'm bad with money, I'm bad with money, I'm bad with money, versus, okay, I'm good with money, I'm good with money. That's such a different way of looking at it and such a healthier way to approach it.
I think about the same thing. First, again, there's the power to writing something down.
Yeah.
And then it's similar to stating goals. When we are working in financial planning, we encourage people to say what they think, even if they feel like it's too aspirational.
Yeah.
Because putting something out there makes it more constructive and achievable if you can put it on paper and then start to go through steps.
Yeah.
These types of exercises are invaluable.
Mm-hmm. So the next part of the exercise is taking that reframed statement, and I'm a big believer in having action items. So, what are we doing to now reinforce our, what's going to become our new story or our new belief? So small changes are key. So I just want you to take some time, even tonight as you're just reflecting back on today, and just think of some ways that you can reinforce the, I am good with money statement. And so a few ideas I thought were, some people really like the, waiting 30 days before purchasing something. On large purchases, I've actually personally waited up to a year on some things. Maybe you're writing a grocery list and you only go to the store once a week, or you're meal prepping. Or an easy one is you signed up for this webinar today, so you're taking a really big step into, your curiosity is leading you to things that could reinforce that new belief as well. Some people really enjoy listening to financial podcasts or even other webinars as well. So once you've thought through what you can do and what your plan could be, you put the two together. So your new story is, technically equals your reframed statement plus your action item. So the I am bad with money, now becomes I am good with money, because I listen to financial podcasts, or I make good financial decisions, I'm working with a financial advisor, or, I'm a saver now. I use an app called Digit, which is a great app to use. There are tons of tools out there. So the last piece, once you've put together your new story, is really putting it into practice. I think this is really all about repetition and making sure that you're, putting into practice this new story and this new belief. So I have a lot of clients who take on the Post-it note approach, which I think is great. I love, just writing out that sentence or whatever it is, putting it in your car, putting it on your mirror, or on your fridge, wherever you'll see it a lot. Another one I like too is putting it on the background of your phone or your computer. So there's a couple apps, ones like InstaQuote or WordSwag. You can actually create a custom background. So every time you're unlocking your phone or logging into your computer, you're seeing, I'm good with money. I'm, working with a financial advisor, whatever it is.
And I suggest too that one of the ways to put it into practice is to share with someone, whether it is that close friend that you're imagining in conversation with yourself, whether it's your executive coach or a financial planner. If you say something out loud and have an accountability partner who is there to both check in with you, and you may ask them, hey, can you check in with me in a month and see how I'm doing, or also celebrate when you have those wins, then that is a powerful tool to assist you in sticking with what you have decided that you want for yourself.
Yeah. And, really here, pay attention, to how you're talking to yourself. One thing I tell my clients is often when we're experiencing change or we're focusing on growth, whether that's in a self-development way, oftentimes our old habits or our old beliefs will cling on for dear life because it's comfortable, right? I mean, you've been feeling that way or thinking that way for so long. So just be mindful of that. Use that practice that we talked about earlier in the webinar and really start to retrain your mind into thinking of a more positive way. And over time, it really will become your reality.
When I think about those limiting beliefs, I see them as a little negative Nancy on your shoulder who's saying, everything, discounting things that you are rationally saying to yourself. But when you learn to identify those thoughts and can acknowledge them, it really limits the power, especially when you get into practice, to just say, oh, wait, I acknowledge that thought, but it's not, when you say I see you, it really diminishes the power there.
Yeah, definitely.
So as Morgan and I worked on preparing for this discussion, I had the opportunity, of course, over several months of conversation to really see much of what we're working on in action. And so when you think about your financial story, one of the things that I think it's important to share with you is that you're not alone. And we've mentioned this already, but I see it day to day in a variety of circumstances with clients. Some examples that are a little bit different, Morgan, than your own personal story include people that are uncomfortable with the amount of money that they have. So this may encourage them to give away too much or, just feel bashful or ashamed because they have so much money. Other examples are people who feel very uncomfortable with making financial decisions and very circumspect about any financial interaction because of past decisions. And they may feel frozen or indecisive. Also, people who don't want to know what their money situation is because they think it's going to be so bad.
Yeah.
So they think that, you know, your example when you see the commercial come on TV about you're preparing for retirement and you say, oh my gosh, I know I need to be thinking about it, but I just think it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
And you used a great example. When we met each other, you were really and it was complete. We were both at someone else's presentation, actually.
Yep.
Can you share what your thoughts have been?
So, you know, this just still boggles my mind. But, you know, when I started to become aware of some of the things I wanted to change, once I started to recognize my living beliefs, I really started to invite in this idea of, you know, well, what kind of supportive people do I want in my life to help guide me through this? And I started thinking, you know what, I could really use like a financial advisor or just someone to just meet me with kindness and compassion and just really help me, like gently just walk me down this path. And I'm not joking, but 4 days later, I met Melissa. We were sat next to each other completely just randomly at another presentation and got to talking, and that was almost a year ago now. Mm-hmm. And it's just been an amazing process and journey. And
yeah. So I think that it speaks to something that we all know in a way, which is when you know what you're looking for, it's a lot easier to find it. Yeah. So some of this mindfulness work can both help you feel more comfortable, but I think that it opens doors.
Yeah.
Another example of people that experience this, and you alluded to this, Morgan, as you were speaking, was that you really carry the stories from your childhood and your family with you throughout your life. The easiest example I can think of that we all still know people like this is the children of a Depression era and people who experienced depression and how they looked at scarcity and resources from those experiences. So I think of my grandmother and, you know, reusing aluminum foil and, you know, keeping just everything, which actually can be a great habit, but you need to make sure it's with moderation. And so thinking back through those stories that you carry with you, the lessons, the values, which can be quite positive, as well as the insecurities or negatives that can become hurdles to your financial success. Those are great examples where these limiting belief exercises and the power of journaling, mindfulness, and conversations that relate to you, both with money and just with life, can be very powerful. Mm-hmm. So, Morgan, what's next? Yes.
So I just want to just empower everybody and make everybody feel, you know, really excited. I do know that this can seem a bit daunting, but the earlier you start to uncover this, the sooner that you'll be able to start rewriting this and creating a better future and relationship with your finances in this case. So, you know, again, much like I was driving back to Michigan that day, you know, you're in control and you have the ability and the tools within yourself to make all of this seem not so unattainable.
So as we wrap up, we both Morgan and I want to encourage you to reach out to us if you have follow-up questions. We feel very passionate about the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. So this is this topic is something that's just so fun for me because it relates to you could share this with anyone and it would be relevant.
Yeah.
And Morgan, how about you? People can reach out?
Definitely, yeah. So actually, people, for the webinar, if you're wanting to dive a little bit deeper into this topic and maybe explore some more work, I will be offering a free 30-minute introductory session. So the best way to get in contact with me is just to email me. It's morgangllc@gmail.com. And just know that it is important to have that supportive team, the people who have tools to help guide you through it. It's much like I was seeking that work, you know, through a financial advisor. I was ready for it. I had been mindful and I was really prepared to take that on. So I invite you to do that and just be kind to yourself and take care.
Everybody can use that advice. So as we're wrapping up, I also want to mention that our fall webinar series is about to kick off and we have 4 terrific, very diverse webinars upcoming. if you know anyone who is sending someone off to college soon or has them at school now, we have a great nuts and bolts introduction to FAFSA, which is the financial aid forms that everyone needs to fill out. Anyone who's enrolling in Medicare, we have both in-person and online educational presentations coming up in October during open enrollment. We'll do our annual year-end tax and financial planning opportunities, which is the year-end wrap-up in November. And then we have something really special. Sandy Adams will be hosting Peter Lichtenberg, who is twice widowed and talks about, and also a gerontologist, so an aging expert who's going to talk about his own personal experiences with grief and loss, which based on a book that he wrote. So we're always trying to educate, and if you have topics too that you think would be relevant for our future webinars, please let us know. So with that, I want to thank you, Morgan, because you've put together something that I think is so approachable for so many people. So I know I'm going to be sharing the recording of this webinar with many people along the way. And you should know, too, for our audience, that we will be sending you a video copy of this webinar, and our newsletter will have a summary and wrap-up in case you know of people who these types of conversations would be relevant as well. So with that, thanks for joining us, and we'll look to see you at a future education event.
Thank you.